there could not be a marathon without Gilbert and George. In 2006, they launched a protest against rucksacks. And last year in the Manifesto Marathon, the unforgettable manifesto, ban religion, ban religion, ban religion. There's not a single day at the Serpentine without us quoting Gilbert and George or thinking of Gilbert and George. Julia Peyton-John said, I every day think of art for all, or to be with art is all we ask. Since first meeting at St. Martin's School of Art in 1967, Gilbert and George have devoted their lives to the creation of their art. The art is moral, violent, tirelessly questioning, and visually extreme. The themes explored by the artists are common to all humankind: sex, money, nationhood, individual and social relationship, language, and nature. For this year's marathon, the Poetry Marathon, Gilbert and George will present their poems, but they also made this wonderful suggestion that in the second part, there will be a reading of their friend David Robilliard's poems. Gilbert and George have published his books, and there will be a reading of his poems. A very, very warm welcome to Gilbert and George.
Good afternoon. We will begin with the 8 limericks from 1971. There were 2 young men from afar who travelled and met with no bar. They went up and down in their way and attempted to make the world pay. There was no one at all they could blame, because it just goes this way. They've had a few pokes in the eye, but like everyone else, they're not blind.
There were 2 young men who were tired. They were tired and a little bit lost. They thought they were kings of the best and found out they were just like the rest. One day they went out for a day, so they risked falling down a drain. They smiled like 2 babies without fear, as you all be happy to hear.
There were 2 young men who were crooked. They were crooked in the way you feel best. They gave them the answers to live and left them with heads full of fizz. But their friends they left all behind. They became lonely, artistic, and shy. Be aware of these silly old heads, or you'll always look over the hedge.
There were 2 young men so polite in the way that they moved. Their mothers have told them to wait, but their chances, the boys felt, were great. Good morning, dear Dad, it's no time to rise. The 2 sweeties await your surprise. Whilst the birds whistle outside on the fence, the 2 young men sleep out without sense.
There were 2 young men who were charming as sweets. They turned the heads of all in the streets. They looked at their ties and laughed and were pleased. Looking down at their socks, they began to sneeze. The boys didn't mind as much as they might, for they were artists and that was their plight. The funny thing is, they're really quite normal. It's just that they seem of another order.
There were 2 young men with no heart and no peace. They thought to be free, lying under a tree. And so they lay there from dawn till dusk, enjoying the air and the chickens and ducks. They thought to be nice and wave with their hands, and so day after day they are under that tree, counting the leaves and waiting for tea. They are as happy as can be.
There were 2 young men who were covered with blood. They are wounded and slashed and smeared with mud. They battle along, singing a song, straining to be jolly, though the journey's long. They think nothing of health or worry or care, because their job is to do their share. So left leg out and away it goes, and where they go to, nobody knows.
There were 2 young men who did laugh. They laughed at the people's unrest. They stuck their sticks in the air and turned them around with their best. Then, with time, they began to feel strange, for no longer it swung in their way. So to capture again that old thrill, they started to take the life pill.
And now we'll read the 8 Pink Elephants from 1973. Had 2 dizzy spells at lunch today. Asked the 2 identical waiters to bring us a couple of doubles for the second time. Felt twice as good. Is that a treble?
We dropped by quite a number of places of refreshment last evening, and everyone seemed very friendly and flighty on the whole. Whoops!
Went up to the bar and ordered these drinks. Lost those somewhere, ordered a couple more, found that we'd forgotten the others, so we had another round. Found some and tended to lose track a shade. Wonderful stuff.
There is not an awful lot to be said for the case of getting home in time sometimes. Early days.
Nice Beano last night. Awoke this morning feeling absolutely marvelous. There must be some road repairs going on nearby, as there is this terrible sound of drilling. Brrr.
Made a fair number of decisions in the bar last night, carried them all out, and went home happy and diagonal. Stagger, stagger.
Felt a trifle queer last night. Couldn't eat a thing, couldn't drink a thing. Lay very still for a few minutes. Drank a lot, and later quite made up for it all. Who said gin?
After a certain number of glasses of certain drinks, certain people prefer to ride in the front of the cab. You okay, sir?
Now we will read 6 poems from our film, The World of Gilbert and George, from 1981. We walked through rain to Farnborough, past ivy, shop, and tomb. We heard some hounds and saw some woods, and liked them more than old foxes' wombs. Then we came back on the 47, not mugged, but changed twice. A day well passed and used up right in our dirty, mooded life.
The paint peels off, the wood rots on, the stone begins to crumble. A tramp sleeps here sometimes at night, after drinks and a dirty stumble.
A friend came to our house one day. He knocked upon the door. He stood outside, we stood inside, our shoes glued to the floor. He waited and waited, our table creaked, and then he turned and left. We looked and sighed and breathed again, for no one had crossed our door.
A rose was on our cupboard new. It spoke to us, of us in wood. We touched its sepals, runners, teeth. It scratched a hand and made it bleed.
A tart was walking down our street. He looked, we looked, he nodded. His hands were red. His face was white. He was the best tart of the night.
The door is locked, the windows jammed, the building is quite dead, for no one comes here anymore, unless they are strange in the head.
And now we will introduce our late friend, David Robillard, the poet and artist. We wrote something about him in 1993, which we will read to you. Our David. David Robillard was the sweetest, kindest, most infuriating, artistic, foul-mouthed, witty, sexy, charming, handsome, thoughtful, unhappy, loving, and friendly person we ever met. Over the 9 years of our friendship, David came closer to us than any other person. He will live forever in our hearts and minds. Starting with pockets filled with disorganized writings and sketches, he went on to produce highly original poetry, drawings, and paintings. His truthfulness, sadness, desperation, and love of people gave his work a brilliance and beauty that stands out a mile. Not a day passes without our thinking of David. His works live on for us all as a spiritual, cultural force and a great lesson in human love. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.